clock on Sarah's nightstand read 11:58 p.m. She sighed, staring at the darkened ceiling of her bedroom. Sleep always came slowly these days. Her insomnia had worsened since moving into the old Victorian house on the edge of town. A fixer-upper her husband, Mark, had fallen in love with at first sight. The house had character, Mark had said, a charm that couldn't be replicated. But Sarah couldn't ignore the unease that settled over her whenever night fell. The creaks and groans of the ancient floorboards, the distant hum of the wind sneaking through cracks in the walls. It all felt like more than just an old house settling. As the clock struck midnight, a faint noise pulled Sarah from her thoughts. It sounded like a soft, rhythmic tapping coming from somewhere downstairs. She sat up, straining to hear. Tap, tap, tap. Her heart quickened. "It's probably just the wind," she whispered to herself, trying to convince the chill creeping up her spine to settle down. But when the tapping grew louder, more deliberate, Sarah swung her legs over the edge of the bed, grabbing the flashlight she kept on her nightstand. Mark was working the night shift and wouldn't be home until dawn. She was on her own. Her bare feet made no sound on the carpeted stairs as she descended into the darkened living room. The tapping had stopped, but the oppressive silence was worse. Sarah swept the flashlight beam around the room, her breath catching when it landed on the front window. A handprint pressed against the inside of the glass. Her pulse roared in her ears as she approached the window, the flashlight trembling in her grasp. The handprint was small, like that of a child, and it was fresh, still glistening as though it had just been made. But the house was locked. She was alone, wasn't she? "Hello," Sarah called out, her voice barely above a whisper. It felt foolish, like an invitation for something she couldn't name. A muffled giggle came from the direction of the kitchen. Her stomach clenched. She whipped the flashlight toward the sound, but saw nothing. "Who's there?" she demanded, trying to sound braver than she felt. No response. Gripping the flashlight like a weapon, Sarah inched toward the kitchen. The air grew colder with every step, and the smell of damp earth filled her nostrils. She rounded the corner and froze. The refrigerator door was open, its light casting long shadows across the floor. On the counter beside it sat a single dirt-encrusted teddy bear. Its button eyes glinted in the pale light, staring directly at her. Sarah's breath hitched. That wasn't hers. That hadn't been there before. The giggle came again, closer this time, right behind her. Spinning around, Sarah found herself face to face with nothing but empty air. Her heart pounded like a drumbeat in her chest. She backed away from the counter, her hand fumbling for the light switch on the wall. The kitchen was flooded with light, and the giggling stopped. The teddy bear was gone. Sarah's legs felt weak, but she forced herself to move, to retreat to the safety of her bedroom. As she climbed the stairs, the tapping resumed, this time from the hallway window above her. Her head snapped up, and she gasped. A shadowy figure stood on the other side of the glass, motionless, its face obscured but its presence undeniable. With trembling hands, Sarah ran to her bedroom, slamming the door behind her and locking it. She scrambled under the covers, clutching her phone. She tried to dial Mark, but the screen glitched, the numbers flickering and disappearing, as though someone or something was interfering. A cold breeze brushed against her cheek. The bedroom window was open. Her eyes darted to the foot of the bed, where the dirt-encrusted teddy bear now sat, its button eyes glinting in the moonlight. Slowly, the giggling returned, but this time it came from within the room. Sarah didn't dare move as as the sound grew louder, closer. Her flashlight flickered, its beam cutting out entirely. The last thing she saw before everything went dark was the shadowy figure stepping out from the corner, its face finally illuminated. It was her own. When Mark came home the next morning, he found the house eerily quiet. Sarah's phone was lying on the bed, its screen cracked. The sheets were rumpled, but there was no sign of her. The only clue was a single, dirt-encrusted teddy bear sitting on the kitchen counter, its button eyes glinting as though it were laughing.